As U.S. military helicopters roared over Kabul in August 2021, history repeated itself. Saigon, 1975. Kabul, 2021. A nation once propped up by the mightiest military on earth crumbled in days. Why did America walk away from a 20-year war? Was it a strategy, a surrender, or a price tag that could no longer be justified? If you want to understand the real stories behind America's biggest decisions, the wins, the failures, the forgotten facts, then hit like, smash that subscribe button, and ring the bell for timeless truths. This is Timeless America. The beginning of the Forever War. It began with fire and fear. September 11th, 2001, a day etched in American memory. 4 hijacked planes, nearly 3,000 dead, and a shaken nation demanding justice. The mastermind? Osama bin Laden. His refuge? Afghanistan, under Taliban rule. Just weeks later, on October 7, 2001, the U.S. launched Operation Enduring Freedom. American B-52 bombers screamed through Afghan skies, dropping payloads over Taliban positions. Within weeks, the Taliban regime collapsed. U.S. boots were on the ground, and a global coalition followed. Initially, it was a swift victory. Bin Laden escaped, but al-Qaeda's infrastructure was in ruins. The world applauded. America, it seemed, had struck back with precision. But victory turned into occupation. And occupation turned into a nation-building mission that would last 2 decades. From counterterrorism to nation-building, the Bush administration pivoted. The mission changed from hunting terrorists to rebuilding a failed state. Schools, roads, hospitals. Democracy, women's rights, a modern Afghan army. Billions were pumped into the country. A new constitution was written. In 2004, Hamid Karzai was elected as the first president of democratic Afghanistan, but cracks were showing early. The Afghan government was corrupt, tribal divisions ran deep, and the Taliban wasn't gone. They had just melted into the mountains. By 2006, Taliban insurgents were back in full force, launching suicide bombings and ambushes. The U.S. found itself fighting a guerrilla war in a terrain it barely understood, against a force that knew every valley and every village. The cost of a generation's war America began pouring money and lives into Afghanistan, according to Brown University's Costs of War project. $2.3 trillion spent, over 2,400 American service members dead, 20,000 plus wounded. Hundreds of thousands of Afghan casualties. Taxpayers were paying $300 million a day. And what was the return? By 2010, the war had already become the longest in U.S. history. President Obama surged U.S. troop levels to over 100,000 in 2009, hoping to turn the tide. But the Taliban didn't collapse. Instead, they adapted. They fought harder, melted into Pakistan, and waited. Obama's plan? Surge, then withdraw. But withdrawal dates kept getting extended. 3 presidents, 1 wart. 3 U.S. presidents tried to solve Afghanistan. Bush started it. With conviction, Obama surged it. With hesitancy, Trump wanted out. With fury, Donald Trump in 2020 struck a deal with the Taliban in Doha. No Afghan government representatives were included. The deal was simple. U.S. would leave. Taliban would stop attacking U.S. forces and promise to negotiate. That deal set the stage. By the time President Joe Biden took office in 2021, the withdrawal was already in motion. Biden's final pull. Strategy or disaster? In April 2021, Biden announced, "It is time to end America's longest war." He set the final deadline for August 31st. The Taliban, sensing the vacuum, began sweeping through provinces with alarming speed. Afghan forces, despite $88 billion in U.S. training and equipment, collapsed. Some surrendered, others fled. By August 15, 2021, the Taliban entered Kabul. President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, and the government America spent 20 years propping up vanished in a weekend. The world watched in horror as chaos erupted at Kabul airport. Civilians clung to planes. A suicide bomber killed 13 U.S. troops and 170 Afghans. The withdrawal was complete by the deadline, but the optics were devastating. Failure or strategy? So why did the U.S. leave? Let's break it down. Military failure, not in traditional terms. The U.S. defeated the Taliban militarily in 2001. But insurgency isn't won on battlefields alone. It's won in hearts, minds, and in lasting institutions, none of which America could firmly establish in Afghanistan. Strategic exit? Biden argued it was the only strategic choice left. He said, "We were in Afghanistan for one reason: to get the terrorists who attacked us on 9/11. Mission accomplished." Yet many argue the strategy was flawed, especially the Doha deal that sidelined the Afghan government and emboldened the Taliban. Financial exhaustion? Yes, undeniably. After the 2008 financial crisis and the costs of Iraq and Afghanistan, public appetite for war waned. The COVID-19 pandemic, rising inflation, and domestic priorities demanded an end to forever wars. America was tired, its economy was stretched, and Afghanistan was no longer seen as strategically vital. Global repercussions. The world took notice. Russia saw weakness. China moved to fill the vacuum. Terrorist groups like ISIS-K and Al-Qaeda gained breathing space. Allies questioned U.S. commitments. For many, Kabul's fall echoed Saigon, 1975, a reminder that military might can't always dictate political outcomes. What went wrong and right? What went wrong? Ignoring tribal dynamics, overestimating the Afghan army, underestimating Taliban resolve corruption in the Afghan government, inconsistent U.S. strategies across administrations, disastrous withdrawal planning. What went right? Bin Laden was eliminated, 2011. Abbottabad, Pakistan. Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan was significantly weakened. U.S. learned valuable counterinsurgency lessons. A generation of Afghan women accessed education and work, but the gains weren't sustainable. The real cost, beyond dollars we talk about trillions, but what about the human cost? Veterans suffering from PTSD. Afghan interpreters abandoned a generation of Afghans born under freedom, now under Taliban rule, and perhaps worst of all, the loss of trust in American promises. Recent developments, 2022-2025. The Taliban banned girls from education beyond 6th grade. Women barred from working in NGOs and government. The Afghan economy collapsed, leading to a humanitarian crisis. Over 90% of the population lives below the GUS poverty line. ISIS-K launched multiple terror attacks, including against the Taliban. U.S. continues counter-terror operations remotely, including drone strikes on high-value targets like Ayman al-Zawahiri, killed in 2022. Afghanistan became a test case for China's Belt and Road ambitions and a battleground for influence between Russia, China, Pakistan, and Iran. As of 2025, Afghanistan remains unstable under hardline Taliban rule, with growing extremist activity and diplomatic isolation. What America learned: you can't build a nation from the outside. Military occupation cannot replace local legitimacy. Exit plans must be as detailed as entry strategies. Allies matter, and so does how you leave them. The war in Afghanistan has become a cautionary tale, not just of American overreach, but of how intentions, however noble, can be undone by reality. Conclusion: the legacy of a lost war. In the end, America's departure from Afghanistan was not just a policy shift, but a reckoning. It was a decision made not only in the war rooms of Washington, but in the homes of Americans who had grown tired of burying sons and daughters for a cause that seemed endless. Was it a failure? Yes. Was it a strategy? Also, yes. Was it about money? Without question. It was all of these, and more. Afghanistan, now ruled again by the Taliban, stands as a monument to the limits of power, the dangers of hubris, and the price of good intentions gone awry.